Hi there, welcome to my YouTube channel. My name is Sandy Zimmer. Today I'm going to show you how to create an art journal inspired by this Pinterest post by Diane Duba. I hope I'm saying her name right. I want to give her credit for this. I love this idea. And when I saw it, I thought of a whole lot of close to my heart products I could use to create it. So I'm starting with an old product that's no longer available, which is this art journal. And I'm showing you a couple of pages that I previously created. This one is done with heat embossing. I haven't put any words on these pages yet, but I will do that. And I'm just showing you some of the things. That one looks like it's got washi tape on it. This one's got some flowers on it. There's a bunny. This one is one that I was working on years ago and didn't quite finish, but I like how that all came together. So I'm going back to this page, and this is the one I've decided to use. So I always, when I get new stamp sets, I stamp out a whole bunch of things, and while I'm watching TV or while I'm at the lake, I'll color them in and then use them as I see fit. So I had these little girls here from the Hot Flashes stamp set, Z3973. Now this is an older stamp set, but it's still available on my website, sandyzim.closetomyheart.ca, if you're interested in purchasing it. So I cut her off of there, and then I'm just sort of going through all of the different things that I have. This is the Storybook die cut pack, and it's X7289E, and there's some dragons in here, so that's kind of what I was going for. There's a big sword. Really not sure at this point what exactly I'm going to use, but I'm just sort of pulling elements together and playing with them and seeing what I want to use on this page. Just as I go to put it away, I realize, oh, there's a smaller dragon down at the bottom here. So I might pop that out, and I might use that one instead of the big one, or maybe I'll use both. I haven't really decided at this point. So it's just sort of fun to pull out all the things that you've got here and see what you want to do and how they can work together to create the images that you like. I also pop out this crown again, not really sure if I'm going to use it or not. I feel like it's a little too big, but the fun thing with art journaling is it doesn't really matter if the sizes match up. So you can kind of do whatever you want. So I put that girl on there, and she's purple, and then I realized, oh, there's a pink one. I kind of like that better because she matches the roses and the colors that are going on there a little bit better. So I decide to go with her, and then I'm just tossing those dragons and things on there. I like how they're going to come together, I think. So definitely going to use those elements, and of course that sword as well. So let's see what else I have in my stash. Well, I've got some more storybook scrapbooking papers, and this one comes with a sticker sheet. This is X7289S, and I'm just sort of perusing this one, and look at that, it says Dragon Slayer on there. So those are words that are in that sentiment that I was thinking about putting on there, so I'm definitely pulling that off. Putting that on my all-purpose mat here for future use, pardon me. And then there's also a little sticker down at the bottom here that is a zip strip sort of. And then there's another one there that has a sword on it, so I peel those ones off. And I don't know, there's some banners and things I might use, but for right now, that's all I'm going to use off of there. This paper is sort of feminine on one side and masculine on the other. And I spot that castle in the upper right-hand corner there. And I'm thinking that's going to work perfect in my upper right-hand corner. So I just sort of randomly cut it out, and yep, liking how that's coming together. So there were some other pieces I cut off of there, and then I decided not to really use. So I didn't cut them out anymore. So I'm going through my storybook stamp sets here and seeing if there's anything I want to use. Now, I could use the dragon from this stamp set rather than those black die cut ones, but I like them. So you can see here this girl, she's got a mug in her hand, and I didn't want the mug in this picture. So I cut it off, and I think it kind of looks like a pocket. So I just grabbed that bright pink shades and I color that in, and look at that, it's all camouflaged. You can't even tell. So now I'm fussy cutting out this castle, and I cut that flag right off of there. It's too tiny to fussy cut around, and I think if I want it, I'll just draw it back in. So just again playing with the placement here of these items and how and where I want them to go. Nothing's for sure just yet, of course. It's just playing around and seeing what I like. So I want to create some bricks. So I go through my stamp sets and see what I have that I can use for bricks. So believe it or not, I actually go into the Sounds Like It Hurts stamp set, Z4709, and I flip around that piece that says Get Well Soon. And look at that, I can create some bricks. So here you can see me putting it on a smaller block. And I'm going to put some ink down on my all-purpose mat. I'm going to spritz that with a little bit of water just to make it a little bit more fluid. And I can use it to stamp just like that. But they didn't look brick-like enough for me, so I went ahead and I grabbed my espresso and then I dipped it in that watery fluid, and I kept flipping the stamp set up and down, over and over, and creating those brick patterns. And of course, I'm randomly stamping them on there and placing them in between each other. So here you can see I've gone around the page and done that. I like how that turns out. So you can look at your stamps from the front and the back, and you just get to use them more and more. So now I'm grabbing my blender brush because I'm feeling like they're standing out just a little too much for me on this page. So I'm blending those together a little bit. And again, just depending on the pressure that you put on will depend on how much ink is going down on that page. Now this page is pretty porous, so it takes the ink quite easily. So that's just something to remember as well, depending on what you're using. And then I sort of lift this up and I want to go around the edge and ink all the way around just to create a little bit of depth. So I do a lot of that off camera. And now I'm just popping that castle on there and I'm liking that placement, but it's pretty white. So while I have that blending brush in my hand, I'm just going to go over the whole thing with the espresso and tone it down just a little bit. So far so good, but it needs a little bit more color. So I'm grabbing that gold browned blend and I'm just sort of doing some shading around the different pieces of it. Pardon me. And you can see here that I've got pinks in all of those. So I decide, hey, let's use that bright pink shades and make the roof that color. And then just some of the other pieces. So as strange as it may seem, I did it in pink. So again, back to that gold brown blend, and I'm just sort of going over some pieces here to create some shade and some shadows around the edges and just really bring that castle to life. So there's a close-up of it. And then I want to use my silver paint pens, the 7mm here, and I'm going to go in and I'm going to color those windows so that they look like glass. And you could use gold or you could use whatever color you want. You could even just use a marker, but I like the shine that this gives and the reflectiveness of it. So on that paper, it's got some little dots and some sort of shaded areas. So I just go over those with that paint pen as well and add those dots just for a little bit more interest and shine. And I'm really liking how that's coming together so far. And I think that she goes fairly well in front of it. And let me just see, what else are we going to do here? What should we do? Well, I thought we needed something off to the left there. So I grabbed some more of that paper and I just randomly tear it, exposing the middle, which is white core, although the paper is white anyway. And I lay that down on there. Now, because this book is bound and I can't take that paper out, I just decide I'm going to put this right up against the edge. And again, it's pretty stark white, so I'm going over top of it with that espresso and my blender brush and just toning it down a tiny bit. And I'm going to glue it right up against the very edge. And magically, it just happens to be the right size, so I was pretty lucky there, although I could have easily flipped it over and then cut it off the edges there. So I did leave a little bit of area that isn't totally glued right there where my hand is so that I could slide something underneath, but I don't end up actually putting anything underneath on this layout, but there's always that potential, so I like to leave that option opened. So I go ahead and I commit to putting this castle up in the upper right-hand corner here. And if you remember, that top of that castle was cut off, so I just stuck it right up in the corner with it cut off, and it works out just great. Go back in with my blender brush to just add a little bit more shadow, and again with that gold brown blend to create a little bit more depth. I'm going to go out a little wide here and give that castle some land to stand on. And I'm really liking how it's coming together so far. Tone it down a tiny bit. And where do I want her to go? I think I'm going to put her right there. So same thing, I go in with that gold brown blend and I create a landing spot for her. I always like for my stamps and things to have somewhere to stand rather than floating through the air. So this is hers. And again, I'm just going to tone it down so that it all blends together really nicely. And I'm going to put her on there temporarily and see what I think. So far, so good. So then I think, oh, I kind of want to put something else on there, make it a little bit more interesting. So I'm going through my card front stencil pack, Z6093, and I decide on this swirly one. And I'm going to switch to my pewter ink here and just go over with my blender brush and create that image in the background. Excuse me, I want to go in a few places here just again to create some continuity here. That white space or brown space up there is a little blah, so I add a little bit up there. And then I kind of want to put some down where the flowers are as well, just so that it all goes together. And then when I lift it up here, you'll see that I kind of went right to the edge of that stencil. And I didn't like how I had a stark line, so I'm just going through and finding petals that sort of match so that I can leave with a rounded edge rather than that straight line. It's not perfect, but I think it works. And next I come in with my white gloss spray, Z5010, and I'm going to sprinkle that on there. I've really glued that castle down, so I'm just covering it up with some Post-it notes so that I don't end up getting white blotches where I don't want them. And what I'm going to do is, instead of using the spray part for this, I'm just going to take that part out of the middle there and just use it like that. And I've got a little bit more control over where it's going, and I'm not going to spray all over the whole book, especially that other side. I don't really want to get anything on there or my cover. So I like how that's coming together. I take off my Post-it notes, put her back on. And I really lucked out on how those little white dots kind of come off from her feet. And then you'll see in a little while here when I put my little dragon up there, he's going to go into those white dots area. So I've got this big dragon and I really like it, but I want it to stand out a little bit more. I'm finding with it just having that brown base and being see-through, you can see the background, and I'm not loving that. So I just adhere it to some white daisy cardstock. And then off camera, I'm going to fussy cut that out. There we go. And that's looking pretty good, but now it's too white. So I'm going to grab those two colors again, the gold brown blend, and in a little while, the bright pink shades. And I'm just going to color in his belly and his wings, give him some nice bright pink cheeks just to make him fun. And color him up a little bit just to add again those same colors, keeping it pretty simple with the color palette. Now again, he's a little bit bright, so I go in and I use my espresso ink and my blender brush and I tone him down just a tiny bit. I have this rose sitting on my desk. Ironically, it's just hanging out there. And I think, okay, roses. I know they're not exactly the same, but you know what? That's kind of the fun of the art journal, is you get to add whatever you want to add. So I play around with that in a little while here. Now I'm feeling like I need another layer of paper in this corner. And so I'm playing with these strips that I had pulled out before. I sort of like this one, but it's too straight and it's too wide. So I just go in and I tear it. And I like how that's coming together. And then the bottom piece here, I just tear the ends off, and that's going to be my resting place for that big dragon at the bottom. And so again, I grab my pewter ink and my blender brush, and I add some pewter to it to take away the brightness of that. Add some pewter to that rose as well. And I think I'm going to place it there. So I commit to putting that strip of paper down. And now I'm putting the base for that dragon to be. This is where I blend them just to tone down the brightness of them a little bit. And I also add a little bit to that strip. I don't think I do it on camera, but I do it off camera. And then there's my rose. So I'm liking how that's coming together. I decide I'm going to use a little bit of foam tape. This is the thin one, Z2060. And I pop it on the back of that rose just so that it can be lifted to the same height as that dragon and sort of overlap it. So I like how that's coming together, and I put that down. So far, so good, I'm thinking. So here's a little bit of a peek of how it looks so far. So now I'm just grabbing the things off of my mat here and sort of deciding what I'm going to do next. So I've got those words, the Dragon Slayer, and that big sword. And I really want to use it, but I'm sort of feeling like it's just too big. I don't know. Again, it's art journal, so it would be okay, but I have that sticker and it's got a smaller sword on it that sort of goes with the size of her. So I decide I'm going to use that. I'm going to fussy cut it out. It fits well in her hand. It's the right size. So I just come in again with those same colors and I color that sword a little bit and I commit to it. I like how it's coming together. Looks like it fits perfect. Again, I'm going around the edge of her on that paper, and it's doing two things. One, it's creating a little bit of shadow for me, and it's also covering up any of those white lines I might have had from the paper when I trimmed it out, especially if I didn't do a great job of trimming. So I like how that comes together. There we go. So far, so good. Now back to these words. Dragon Slayer. Well, I don't want it to be Slayer. I want it to say Slay Dragon, so I'm cutting those apart. And I'm just sort of playing with the placement here. Putting those on. So if you remember originally what the sentiment was, I have to add some words in there. And I grab my LabelMaker, which is honestly, I think, the only product that is not close to my heart in this whole art journal layout. And I type in the words that I want. Pardon me. And then you'll see in a moment here that I send them to print and I cut them. Here they come. I will slay my own dragon. So I'm going to cut those apart and trim them down so that they fit in the same area. And I'm going to play with the placement there. Of course, this has backing on it. It's self-sticking, which I love. And I'm thinking, do I want it to be I will, as in two words together, or cut them apart? And I decide to cut them apart. And then I also think that they're just a little too big, so I'm going to cut them a little smaller. At first, I'm like, oh, I want them to be perfectly cut, and then I realize I'm doing an art journal. It doesn't matter. It can be crooked, it can be off-center, it can be whatever. Whatever you want works for this. So that's the fun part again. So right now it says, I will slay, and now I'm going to cut out those extra words and put them in the middle here. And I realize I might have to move them around a little bit in order to get everything to fit. Now that I've cut that down a little bit, it's a little harder to get that backing off, but it still works. And so here I am just placing them on there. So now I've got to fit the word my in there. And I think I want to move it down because I'm feeling like it's a little crowded. So I just use my scissors. I love these scissors. They work so great for giving me, you know, that flexibility to pick something off without destroying it, as well as, of course, cutting really well. And there we go. I will slay my own dragon. So on this, there's a thank you on this stamp set. And that is the Storybook Card Making Workshop. And so that one is G1272. So if you've bought this and you think you can only make cards with it, nope, you can do lots of things with it. So now we've got this frog stamp set here. That's the same one actually, and it's got some really neat little images on there with stars and dots and whatnot. And it also matches that paper that I just tore. So I'm just doing some stamping here with my Black Intense ink. And again, just adding to that background. I want to make sure that I don't stamp on that cover there. So I'm sort of doing a long line and then shorter lines. And just adding them randomly, trying to do odd numbers of lines here, just again for interest. This one I was going to go horizontal, and I decided, you know what, I can actually go vertical. So I just pop those on there as well. And those are kind of leading lines as well to my image, which is really fun and makes it even more interesting. So now there's that crown, and I'm feeling like, oh, that crown actually will fit better than that big one that I picked out. So I stamp it on there, and I add some silver paint pen on there as well. Now I'm going around this with a black marker here, again, just to make those words stand out. And I'm going to add some shadow. I decide I'm going to draw that little flag back in, so I just do it by hand, color it in with a white gel pen, and then just add some more white dots with my gel pen here and there. There's that silver paint pen, and I'm just adding some dots in there with that as well, sort of the base area again. And that's creating that continuity with the shimmer that's in the castle windows. And it's just making it a lot more fun, let's be honest. And again, just going in with my black journaling marker there, just to add a few more as well. And there's a close-up of where we're at so far. Now, of course, I have to doodle around the edge. It's just who I am. So I go all the way around here. Now you'll see at this point there's only one dragon on there, and I decide later on that I want to add that second dragon up at the top. So you will see some pictures with it and some pictures without it. But when I added the small dragon up at the top, I sort of felt like it was almost a two-part scene. So there's the big dragon at the bottom and her and the small dragon at the top. So again, here's a close-up. You can see that sword she's holding. And then that little dragon that I added in. I also decided to add that big sword, and I backed it with some white paper and then colored it in. So you can see it's coming down to the big dragon. So that is it for today. Thank you for watching. I hope you've enjoyed this YouTube post. If you have, please hit subscribe, and then you'll get a notification when I create another YouTube video, as well as if you'd like and share it. That would really make me happy. Thanks so much for watching. Bye for now.